This episode guest is the author of the Cancer Survivor First Aid Kit. Her articles and posts have been published in the Huffington Post, Breast Cancer Wellness Magazine, and the peer-reviewed Natural Medicine Journal. She has stepped up over and over to help cancer survivors through their greatest challenges. Welcome to the show, Dr. Shani Fox. How are you doing?
I'm well, and it's a pleasure to be here, Toby.
It's so great to have you here this moment right now. I'm so glad, and I'm looking forward to everything I'm going to learn from you. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of mirrortalk. As I said before we started recording, I read that it took your father's death to make you realize that you were not making the most out of your life. Please, can you share this story with me and how your journey has been after you decided to pursue a doctoral program at the age of 40?
Yeah, well, what happened is my father passed away when I was in my 40s. And my father had an interesting story himself. At the age of 52, he was hit by an automobile as a pedestrian and almost didn't survive that incident. And I was only 15 at that time. And I watched him pull through that. And more importantly, once he recovered from the actual injuries, he realized how fragile life was. And so he lived every single day of his life so intentionally. He really chose what he was going to do with his time, and he didn't waste any time, and he didn't waste any words. He really lived according to his values and according to the way he wanted to live his life. So when he finally passed away, when I was in my 40s, I realized that this man had no regrets. My father had no regrets. He had lived a life exactly as he wanted. It's not that it wasn't about spectacular achievements. It was about day by day, simply creating the hours and the days of a life that meant something. And what happened at that time, I first observed that, but then I realized, I'm really not living that way. I, at the time, was working in a corporation. I had I was making a very lovely living and doing well at what I was doing, but it was hard work. It was very hard on my family. And I realized that at the end of the day, I didn't even know if I was making a difference to anyone. It was a perfectly lovely position, but I just didn't know I was making a difference in the world.
Yeah.
So once my father passed and I learned those lessons from him, I realized there was probably something to reevaluate there. It was time. So I found myself some support, and I did exactly that. I just reevaluated where I was in my life and realized, if I continued the way I was, I simply would not end up in the position my father was. I needed to make some changes. So on the professional front, I started to ask myself, so what is it you really want to do when you grow up?
Yeah.
And, I had chosen my profession for very practical reasons. I was an accountant. I was in finance at the time. There's nothing wrong with what I was doing. It's a perfectly honorable profession, but it wasn't fulfilling me. And so I had to ask, well, what would that be? What would I be doing if I really felt like I was giving of my best to the world? And I realized, first of all, that I wanted to work directly with people. I wanted to make a direct impact on people's lives.
Yeah.
So the question is, how would I do that? And one day the answer kind of popped into my head. And I was as surprised as anybody, because it was something that I'd wanted to be actually since I was a child. When I was very young, I wanted to be a doctor. And here I was thinking about being a doctor in my 40s with a whole career behind me. And it meant that I'd have to leave my career, be without an income for many years,
Wow.
And my benefits and my vacation. I mean, all the things that go with working a nice corporate position.
Yes.
But the problem was that the dream wouldn't go away. It wouldn't go away. As much as I tried to convince myself that I was good where I was, it wouldn't go away. So one day I simply said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And I started taking my prerequisite courses while I was still working full time, and just worked my way through. And in 2008, I graduated from medical school.
Wow.
as a naturopathic physician, holistic physician.
Yes, yes. But how was it like? How was it like for you, switching or changing lanes, like from, being an accountant to becoming a doctor, or actually going to school to study medicine, or
Yes,
at the age of 40? How was it like for you?
it was scary. I won't deny that. There's a lot of fear that comes up with such things. But the good news is that when you have a vision that really means just took on and lived it every day.
Mm.
So I decided it must be possible. It must be possible. I'm not the first person ever who has done such a thing.
Yeah.
So I just stayed with that it's possible and that there's something very good waiting for me at the end of this. And sure enough, it carried me through. It carried me through.
Wow. Wow.
I've never
And
been sorry and I've never turned back.
wow, that's awesome. And you're doing, an awesome, you're doing a wonderful job right now. It's an awesome job, you know, with cancer patients or cancer survivors, making them happy, bringing them back to, a state where they could live a much more fulfilled life. That was your
Yes.
dream, right? That was what you really wanted to do.
Well, I didn't know about the cancer patients and survivors at first. I mean, that's something that developed as I was in medical school.
Mm.
I simply wanted to help people live happier, healthier lives. To me, being healthy
Yes.
is one of the principal foundations of a happy life. If you're not well, it's not impossible to be happy, but it's a lot more difficult. And so people just have so much more freedom to enjoy themselves and
Yeah.
their lives and the people around them when they are truly healthy. And
True.
so that's why I chose natural medicine as my
Mm.
career, because it's very empowering to the individual. People understand how to make themselves healthy. I mean,
Mm.
with all due respect to the doctors out there, all the doctors out there, we need them.
Yeah. Yes.
Things
Yes.
happen to people. We need people to help, bring them back from those emergency states. But
Yeah.
on a day-to-day basis, people can be so well if they try.
Mm.
And so that's what I wanted, especially for children, for teenagers. It makes such a difference
Yes.
later on in life, especially when we have our own resources to count on.
Yes.
But yeah, the cancer survivors, that came out later on. That came out
Mm.
later on.
What came up about the cancer? What drew you to, work with cancer patients and survivors?
I think the turning point there, I was in medical school, maybe halfway through,
Mm.
and every Friday morning we used to have a grand rounds presentation, which means that a doctor comes in, who's, a doctor from the field comes in
Mm.
and discusses cases with us so that we learn from what's actually going on in people's practices. So a doctor came in who works with cancer patients and survivors, and he brought in with him a panel, three cancer patients, to speak about their experiences and their experiences with this doctor in holistic medicine. So I was so moved by that presentation. I was almost in tears. And so when it was over, I remember I had another class right away, but I didn't go. I remember I went to sit in a stairwell and I just said, what is it that touched me about that? So there's something there that really speaks to me. And I realized that it was because cancer brings us to our most vulnerable place. It puts us, no matter who we were before, it lays us low. It just strips us bare. And so we're forced to confront all the basics of, you know, who are we? How am I living? We have to really come back to the starting point and reevaluate. First of all, how do I get from here to where I want to be, which is simply well? And then from there, how do I want to live my life?
Mm.
And that point of vulnerability, that trough of vulnerability, which we all fear because we feel so, even thinking about it makes us feel weak and
Yes.
afraid.
Mm.
But the truth of the matter is, when we hit that sort of point in our life, whether it's cancer or divorce or like my father, an automobile accident, it could be
Mm.
anything. But when we hit those points in our life, we're very vulnerable, but we're also really open to the possibilities,
Yeah.
what could
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
And so, isn't that the perfect place to work with people who
Mm.
come in having been shaken to their core and now are ready? They're
Mm.
just ready to make the changes that they want in order to live a different kind of life going forward,
True.
among other things, and in fact, very importantly, being healthy.
Yeah.
So when I realized how important that was to them, I said, oh, that's where I want to specifically work in this field. And sure enough, when I got out and started my practice, immediately the universe brought me about half cancer patients and survivors. And so I began to work with that and make that my specialty.
Wow, that's awesome. And from your vast experience with cancer patients and survivors, what would you say is the most common side effect of cancer?
The most common side effect of cancer, as far as I'm concerned, is fear.
Hmm.
I mean, there's all kinds of physical side effects. They're well known.
Yeah.
There's fatigue. There's all kinds of physical things. And by the way, holistic medicine is wonderful for those things. Conventional medicine focuses on cancer treatment. The chemotherapy, the radiation, whatever needs to happen there, and that's extremely important. People need to be pulled back from spreading of the disease.
Yes.
And so I'm grateful to all that work. But the fact of the matter is, at least in the United States, the moment the treatment is over, people are sort of dismissed out on their own, and the system is on to the next patient. There really isn't a lot of attention paid, or frankly, a lot of expertise in what it takes to recover and become well,
Yes.
even physically, not to mention emotionally afterwards. And the emotional side of this is huge. So it wasn't long after I started working with people, cancer survivors, that I realized, okay, there are certainly physical issues we need to deal with here. They need their energy back. If they've got symptoms, residual, neuropathy and all kinds of other things that happen after cancer.
Yes.
There are things that can be helped in that regard, but just as important is this terrible fear they're feeling. They first of all, they've been through such changes. They wonder even who they are anymore. And the biggest question, I think, in many people's minds is, what do I have to do to keep that from happening again?
Yeah.
They just don't want to go back through that experience if they can possibly help it. And so dealing with that emotional side is just as much of a challenge as dealing with anything physical in that regard.
And you help your patients with dealing with this emotional trauma or emotional tumor that they go through.
That's in the end, that's where I ended up specializing. Yes, I actually do a lot of counseling and coaching around. Yes, it has features of trauma. People often throw around the word PTSD. Well, it may not have all the features of PTSD, but it will often have some of them. And people will feel that, whether or not they're diagnosable as PTSD. And so that's, again, part of the experience that needs to be dealt with. If we've been through a trauma of any kind, we're different, and we're going to have trouble coping because that trauma keeps interfering with our thinking going forward. And so, yes, cancer is of that magnitude, and the traumatic aspects of it absolutely need to be dealt with.
Yes. And as I've understood right now, it's like a great battle that, the patient has to fight, or the survivor has to fight, to come back to being normal or living an extraordinary life afterwards, right? Yes. So what are the make or break factors that separate, a survivor who strives and those who don't, survive or strive through this experience?
Yeah. Well, the first factor is the person has to believe it's possible. They have to believe it's possible. So this is where the fear becomes such an obstacle. There are some people who are so, they're holding a belief that, well, this is probably gonna come back again, or I'll never be myself again. And those are beliefs we need to deal with because, of course, anything is possible. I'm not trying to pretend that nothing will happen. We have possibilities, but life has possibilities like that in general. It's not just after you've survived cancer. And so, look at my father, he was a perfectly healthy person. One day something came out of the blue. So things can happen, but we can't live our life with those things hanging over our head like a dark cloud. We have to live our life in the way that we want to live it. So the first thing that has to exist is a belief that this is possible. The how, I can work with you, but you've got to be willing to hold that belief. So that's the first factor. And the second factor is that you come around to an understanding that the power to do this is within you.
Yeah.
It's within you.
Yes.
It's not with the medical system, God bless them, but it's not with the medical system. It's within you.
So you have to have that faith, that's confidence that you will survive.
Yes, you have to have not only the will, but the realization that the power to make progress on this road, it's all within you. And what I help people see is that, you wouldn't have gotten this far. I mean, cancer is a formidable foe.
Mm,
I don't underestimate cancer,
mm,
but look at what it took from you, even just to get through your treatment.
mm,
Look at the strength. Look at the new wisdom. I bet you found things in yourself, resources in yourself you didn't know you had in
mm.
order just to get this far.
Yes.
And so, what we're going to do is take those very same resources, the wisdom and the strength and the intuition, we're going to tap back into those
Mm,
and we're going to apply those going forward. In fact, we're going to magnify those going forward. And that's going to be the source of your well being. You can certainly get guidance and help from those around you, but they're not driving the process. You are.
yeah. Wow. That means, expressing this like teaches you something new or exposes you to something new about yourself or reveals something, great in yourself or a potential that was hidden in you way back.
Yes.
Wow. And
Yes.
one just have to have a positive mindset towards it.
Well, a positive mindset in the sense of believing that it can happen.
Mm,
But I have to tell you something, Toby. The word positive is a mixed bag when it comes to cancer patients and survivors. They don't always want to hear be positive. I mean, if they're feeling positive, they should go with it. That's great. If they're
yes.
having a positive day, by all means.
Mm,
But there are days when cancer is just crappy. I mean, it's just terrible.
yeah.
There's almost nothing positive about certain days when you're going through cancer.
Mm,
And so we don't want to hide that under positivity. We or because it doesn't feel authentic to them. It's like, today I just don't feel well, or
mm,
today I just need to be in bed.
yes.
And there are certain days that happens. So my favorite word when it comes to dealing with cancer and beyond is authentic.
Authentic.
Let's be authentic here.
Ah.
When you're feeling authentically positive, great, enjoy it.
Mm,
If you're willing to be positive and there are ways that can bring you there,
mm,
great, let's do that. But
yes.
not every day is like that. And if you are
Mm,
feeling low for any reason,
mm,
let's be truthful about that.
mm,
Because when we address that, when we don't run from it,
mm,
when we take that into account, that's where we're starting today, then
yes.
we have more of a possibility of building a day that means something that maybe turns positive in the end than if we deny it, because then it
True.
will come back to bite you.
Hmm. Yeah. That's deep. That's very deep. That's very deep. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
as a certified life coach, how would you advise us or advise, a cancer survivor to deal with uncertainty? Earlier you made mention of, they have this fear that it might occur again, or they have this fear that it might maybe get, bad again, or, to recover could be difficult. How would you advise them to, or how would you advise them to deal with, uncertainty in this situation?
Well, I have a two-layered approach. I have a short-term approach and I have a longer-term approach.
Mm,
When we have a headache, usually what's on our mind is, could somebody just please help me get rid of this pain?
yes.
And so if a person takes an aspirin or the equivalent, some painkiller,
Mm,
um, then the headache will go away. And that's good for the moment. That's really good. They're out from under the pain. But the truth of the matter is that headaches have, well, a whole variety of different causes. And if we don't get at the cause, you're going to get more headaches, even if that day you're able to get rid of it with the pill. So, what I teach people who are struggling with fear is I will help them find, I'll give them actually tools that help them in the moment turn fear around.
yeah. Mm.
Um, this is what you mentioned my
Your
book, The Cancer
book,
Survivor's Fears.
exactly.
That's what this is. It's actually just a short book, but it's a kit, is what it is.
Mm,
It's a
mm,
book and a CD with guided visualizations, and it's a workbook. So it's a
mm,
kit that gives you techniques to face down the fear in any particular day
yeah.
and take back your day from the fear. And so it's a very effective in the short term. That's a short-term approach, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I don't want people, in pain or struggling if they can help it. But people also have to realize that unless they get rid of the root causes of their fear, then they're going to feel fear again. You might succeed that day, and you might even get good at those techniques, which means you'll feel it less often, but there's always going to be root causes. And if we don't address, it's like dandelions in the yard, if you don't get the whole root out,
Mm.
you pull out one dandelion, 10 come back, right? It's
True.
like that. It's
True.
like that.
That's
So we
true.
have to get the root causes of the fear. And that's a longer term project.
Mm.
That usually means we have to identify what beliefs are holding you in fear. Why is fear able to take advantage of you like that all the time? Because fear is a
Mm.
real opportunist. And if
Yeah.
you don't have strong beliefs that you can hold on to,
Mhm.
fear is going to come up, front and center. So
Yes.
we have to find where are the beliefs that are allowing fear to take over, and can we replace or upgrade, let's say, those beliefs
Mm.
to ones that are stronger, that will serve you better, that don't allow the fear in so easily. And I do that through, of course, my coaching programs.
Yes.
That's because that takes a more developed process.
Yes. So, well, I'm going to place the link to your website in the show notes for this episode. So anyone who has, who needs help in this regards could reach out to you. I was going through them and I was like, oh, there are a lot of, educative courses on your website that one could sign up for to deal with cancer. And this brings to my next question. Your book, we mentioned of it twice now already. This first aid kit, is it only for the cancer survivor or also for the family member or the neighbor or the friend of this person that's
Ah,
with cancer?
Yeah, actually, the techniques in there would work for anybody. It's anybody who's experiencing fear, and you're right. The people around the patient
Mm.
also very often feel fear and uncertainty, and so the techniques will work for them as well. Actually,
Mm.
it's just I write it as if to a cancer patient or survivor, but the techniques certainly work, and
Mm.
so they can people around a cancer patient can use it for themselves as well as for the person
Yes.
in the middle of the picture.
Oh, great. So how can I show up? Or how can we show up for a cancer survivor or a cancer patient? How can we support them? You made mention of them going through emotional distress or trauma. How can I come up to that level to understand their emotional troubles to be able
Mhm.
to render some support to them?
That's a beautiful question, Toby. Thank you for asking that. Um, and so the word authentic comes back here. So cancer survivors are going through, I mean, patients and even survivors sometimes, they're going through something that's very difficult. And unless you yourself have been there,
Mhm.
you're probably not going to know exactly what that's like. It's a very unique experience. It's a very difficult experience. And so we don't want to pretend that we know what's going on for them. And we don't even have to guess. It's not even necessary. It's not necessary. The most important thing is to allow them to be who they are with you at that particular time.
Mhm.
And just say, I'm here for you.
Mhm.
I'm here for you.
Yeah.
If they want a shoulder to cry on, let them cry. If they just want somebody to sit with them while you drink tea together, that's okay. You don't have to
Mhm.
say anything. You can just say, I'm here for you, and be with them. Maybe spend time with them, ask them what they are feeling like today.
Mhm.
And maybe they have an idea. If they want to just walk outside in their garden today, that's their greatest pleasure. Walk
Mhm.
with them. That's it. Just be there for them. And there's no need to try to invent dialogue or to come up with dialogue. This is difficult for us. Nobody teaches us how to speak to people in these difficult positions.
Of
So
course.
I understand from the visitor or the loved one's point of view that this is challenging. But the
Mm.
truth of the matter is, the simpler you make it, the more effective you're going to be.
True.
Just be there for them.
Yes.
Just be there for them.
I love that answer because I personally have been in this kind of situation before. Like I know someone not far away from me who has cancer and she's going through this chemotherapy and all that stuff. And whenever she's talking to me about the uncertainty, she doesn't know when it will go away, how long it will take for her to get rid of the cancer, if it will even she will survive it at all. I find
Mhm.
myself so confused. I don't know what to do when she talks. Should I comfort her? Should I don't know. I just find myself lost totally, and I feel sometimes guilty not knowing what to do to help at that
Uh-huh.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it is confusing. And there's no question it's confusing. And so if somebody is speaking to you, so
Mm,
that's a little bit different than what I described before. If somebody's speaking to you about their experience,
mm,
um, again, the most comforting thing is empathy. Empathy means essentially, I hear you.
mm,
I hear you. Oh, that must be hard for you. Wow. Yeah, you must have had a hard day yesterday when they did that. So something, just noticing that you hear what they're saying,
yeah.
that alone is comforting. Just hearing them. We don't have to actively comfort in the sense of, oh, it's going to be all right, because there's too much doubt in their mind as to whether it's going to be all right. And so that's not going to necessarily land well for them. That's not going to necessarily land. It's like, well, how do you know? And we don't, right? So again, we want to be authentic, and we don't want to, talk about outcomes that nobody has an idea about right now. What we just want to do is, again, be there with them. And the way to do that is empathy is a beautiful, beautiful tool.
Yeah.
In the sense that I hear you. Ooh, that must have been difficult for you. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just stay there and listen and just empathize with them. Yeah.
And empathize, exactly. That alone, believe me, is very comforting.
Yeah.
Without having to guess farther where the conversation is going to go.
Oh, that's good. that will help me next time. Yeah. But how can people deal with the question of why me? Why is this happening to me? Oh, why did this happen to me? How can people deal with that kind of question?
It's an interesting question, isn't it?
Yes.
And the truth of the matter is, there is no known why. There is no known why. As far as we've come with understanding cancer and cancer treatment, it's the why part is still a big mystery. I mean, we know a few factors that contribute, smoking, lung cancer. I mean, there's a clear association. So we know a few things, and we're getting more knowledge about genetic causes, but even those are not very predictable. So that knowledge is still in its infancy as far as actually why. And the truth is, there could be a lot of things that contribute, and things that we barely are scratching the surface of. There's a lot of environmental things, pollution and electromagnetic fields, things that are starting to become, a rise on awareness, but we really don't have any sense of how much or how often. So the truth of the matter is, we're never going to know why. And the other truth is that there's no rhyme or reason to it. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Unfortunately, there's enough cancer around that we've all seen people who were actually very well up until the day they got diagnosed with cancer. I mean, to all appearances, they were absolutely well. They were living well. They were eating well. They were exercising. I mean, some people are doing, quote unquote, everything right, and they still get cancer. And so there is not, what I say is, there's nothing fair about cancer. There's nothing fair about it. It might as well kind of be random in many cases.
Yeah.
So we don't ask the question why too much. And I help people set aside any sense of guilt about this, that they must have done something, because the truth of the matter is, it may or may not be about that at all.
So there's no way you can avoid it 100%. Like, you can't say, I'm going to eat my vegetables and do this, and
Well, I'm not saying vegetables aren't helpful. I believe. I mean, not only against cancer, against all manner of disease. I mean, yes, I totally believe in a healthy lifestyle. So I'm not saying we should just throw it all to the winds. We should eat healthy. We should exercise. We should sleep well. We living healthy has many, many benefits. One of which is probably reducing the chance of cancer.
Of course.
I'm not going to claim statistics on that, but I truly believe that it's the case. We're just well overall, the chances are less. But in the event that it happens, which it could, then asking why it's understandable, but it's not particularly helpful. What's much more helpful is to say, okay, I don't know why, but here I am. And what can I do from here? What do I need to do from here? Why implies there's an acceptance almost that needs to happen. Okay, here I am.
Yeah.
Here I am. I didn't wish for this. Nobody wished for this for me, but here I am. So what do I do from here forward? And if a person's having trouble coming to that acceptance, this is something I help people with.
Yes, that's the key word that strikes me. Acceptance. Accept the situation and ask how you can move forward from there. But acceptance will be very difficult to accept the situation.
Right.
Yeah. But
That's right.
do you have advice on this, on acceptance? Like, generally, apart from even cancer, there are other situations that happen to one's life, and one be like, I can't accept this. How will I phantom this? Why is this happening to me? So
Yes.
are there like ways from years of living that you could give us to accept our situation and look for solutions to the problems?
I think maybe the first thing, if a person's asking, why did this happen to me? There's almost a sense of, I was targeted, or even in some cases, I've heard this before, I was punished for something.
Yeah.
And in the case of cancer, it just isn't so. But what we need to work on with the person for them to accept that that's not the case is remembering who they actually are. Who they actually are. None of us is less worthy than anybody else, right?
Yes.
We are worthy. We are offshoots of a divine presence of life itself.
Yes.
And every one of us is this. There's not one of us who's better at this than another. It's true of all of us. And so we have to just come back to this place where I'm fundamentally worthy. There is no reason for me to be punished because I'm here for a reason. I'm an offshoot of life. I'm life celebrating itself. And if a person is so inclined, you know, it's helpful to have a belief in a higher power, whether we call it God or anything else, source, universe, it doesn't matter. But having a belief that there's some greater force out there and that I'm connected with its great wisdom and it wants me to be here. I'm part of all that is. In fact, I'm a very unique part of all that is. There's no replacement for me. And so there's no ill intention in having something like cancer occur. It's one of life's challenges. And yes, we have to work on it and face it, but not because we are being punished or targeted anyway. It's not that. It's a challenge. And we become, in fact, stronger and very often more of ourself, our beautiful selves, as we face these things. And so it's one of the hurdles on life's path, but it's not a punishment.
Yes. That things
Makes sense?
yes. That makes sense. Yes.
Yes.
It's not a punishment, but it's a challenge that will make you stronger.
Yes, as are many things in life.
Yes. Yes.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. It's a tough challenge, no question.
Yeah. And that is acceptance. Yes. I found this, I found this quote on your website and I found it very inspiring. You wrote, cancer changes a lot of things, but it cannot change your right. Sorry, cancer changes a lot of things, but it doesn't change your right to be the happiest, most purposeful life you can live. Cancer can't stop you from creating fulfillment, peace of mind, and outrageous joy. That really, that's really inspiring. That cancer changes a lot of things, yes, but it doesn't change your right to the happiest, most purposeful life that you could ever live. So how can every survivor make the most out of his or her life starting from today?
Well, what I tell people is there's a part of you that cancer hasn't touched. In fact, that's the most important part of you. Has it touched your body? Yes. That's a formidable challenge. Has it encountered your spirit and challenged your spirit? Yes. But it hasn't replaced your spirit. The best parts of you, the fundamental essence of you, of who you've always been, is still there. And cancer actually can't touch that. Cancer can't touch that divine part of you, that part that wants to live, that wants to be more. So that part is still there. And what we need to do is just get back in touch with it. And when we do that, that's where we find the strength and the wisdom and the will to create something beautiful beyond cancer.
Yes. So what I'm understanding from this is, okay, cancer might have, attacked your body, but don't let it spread to your soul, to your inner core.
Souls don't get cancer.
Yes. And that is where your happiness actually comes out from.
Yes, because it's the soul that creates happiness and joy and fulfillment. That's the soul that creates those, not really. I mean, our body participates, but it's not really our body. It's our soul that creates that.
Yes. And how does your program help survivors to, to live their, happiest and most purposeful life after surviving or after experiencing this challenge?
Well, as I mentioned before, the first thing we do is look at what's in the way. Have you really got a belief that this can happen? Are you willing? Is fear bothering you? Okay, let's deal with that. So we deal with some of the obstacles first, and then we find the beliefs and we ingrain the beliefs that are going to allow a person to move forward. And then we start to live from those beliefs. So something that I feared before. So, for example, cancer patients, sometimes it comes down to very mundane things. I've had people say to me, I'm afraid this next Christmas is going to be my last Christmas.
Hmm. Yeah.
And this is a person, by the way, whose body was very whole, was very healthy.
Hmm.
But she, having survived cancer, she was always afraid it was going to come back. And what if I don't get to celebrate Christmas with my grandkids?
Yeah.
So I said, well, you have one belief that you won't see Christmas. And now are you willing to believe that maybe you will?
Hmm.
And if you're willing to believe that, then let's start from today and preparing for Christmas. Let's start today, creating Christmas.
Yes.
Because we do that anyway, right? We start in February, we start planning for Christmas.
Yes, yeah.
Right? I mean, there are things we can do. And we do that because it's a joyful thing to us. And we want to experience some of that joy, even in the anticipation of it, right?
Mm.
So we find the ways to do it practically, even by living into what it is we want to see.
Yes.
And by entering that mindset and acting on it, we actually start to create that. It's an event that will come to culmination maybe down in December, but we start to create it from wherever we are. And so perhaps that's a practical example of how we do this. Whatever it is in life, we start to create it now. And this is true even if I'm still dealing with some of my symptoms, even if I'm still dealing with some of my fears.
Yes.
I don't have to delay starting to create these things. In some way, shape, or form, I can do this. It's very interesting. There's Dr. Bernie Siegel was all about this. A surgeon who noticed that some of his patients did spectacularly well, even though the prognosis was pretty heavy. They weren't expected even to survive very long. And some of them survived much longer than expected and live amazing lives. And he's wondering, well, what does it take? What makes the difference for people to be able to do that? And he's written many books about this. And one of the things he found is that even people who are incapacitated would have in their minds the life that they wanted to live, and they would be building it in their minds, and as soon as possible, in practical ways, even in small practical ways, but they were moving towards it all the time. And that mindset, that mindset that was demonstrating itself in action, was about the most powerful factor that made a difference in who made us, who created joy and fulfillment and life beyond a terrible medical diagnosis, and those who didn't.
Yeah.
So it does work.
Wow. That means if everyone has the fear of not, being able to survive to see Christmas, once you start buying the Christmas gift for the grandchild or for the son or for the neighbor, start planning out everything, then you start
that
believing that
is
you see.
powerful. Exactly. And planning how you want your house to look, and starting to, imagine those things, just whatever aspect of it, feeling the love that you're going to feel when people get together. And of course, this coming Christmas, as you and I speak, is going to be particularly precious because last year we were all still, or many of us were still in lockdown. We really yearned for all this. So generating the feelings of the love that you're going to experience and the joy you're going to experience, these are powerful things. These emotions that we can generate, they talk to our cells.
Yes.
Our cells function better. They literally function better when they're in an atmosphere of calm or joy or peace, as opposed to the stress and the fear. So that's the other thing. Chronic fear has physical ramifications because it produces fear hormones that actually are degrading to our cells. So we're even helping our physical health when we're in a process of allowing our soul to express in the way it wants to.
Yes, that's true. And apart from, eliminating the fear, it gives you hope for another day.
Yeah.
Hope for, yes. Hope to
Yes, and I
see.
like to say hope is more of a verb than a noun.
Yes.
It's not just a theoretical thing. It's something that you can create on the ground.
True. Wow. So, for people out there who are interested in, signing up for your program or getting in contact with you, what's the best way? Is there like a virtual way one can get across to you, or is it a one-to-one, kind of program? Can you
Sure.
educate us on this? Yeah.
Yeah, go to my website. My website is drshanifox.com, drshanifox.com. mirrortalk.com.
Mm.
And there you'll find resources on the website, but you'll also find for women, I have a special Facebook group, Women Rising Beyond Cancer. And so any women who are out there who'd like to join in a private dialogue where it's only survivors in the group, and we only talk about things that are important, that are not, you can't talk about just everywhere. So I have a private Facebook group that's helpful. You'll also find a link to purchase the kit, the Cancer Survivors Fear First Aid Kit, if that's helpful. And my coaching programs are all there. It's all there. So my website is a good place to start.
That's awesome. So I'm going to also place this link also in the show notes, and I will
Beautiful.
encourage everyone to just copy the link or click on it and get across to Dr. Shani
Yes.
Fox. Yes. So now we've talked about vulnerability, we've talked about worries, we talked about fears, relating to cancer and also generally in life. So as a last question, what rules of life should we live by to enjoy a fulfilled and happier life?
There's probably a lot that I could think of, but let's start with this one.
Yes.
If it is to be, it's up to me.
If it is to be, it's up to me.
Yeah. That's what keeps me empowered in my own life. In my own life, I remind myself that if there's something that I really want, if there's something that I'm really looking for, certainly things, when things come my way, I'm grateful for that. But if I have to initiate, well, so be it. I initiate.
Mm.
And that moves things along. The universe loves initiators.
Mm. Action takers.
Yeah. Stay empowered. Stay in your
Yes.
initiative.
Wow. It's just like speaking with you today. I had to initiate the conversation, and it happened. And I'm so joyful. I'm so happy. I'm blessed with everything you've been able to share with me right now. I'm so glad, and it helped me also to know how to relate with other people or people that are living with cancer or those who are surviving it, and also a lot of lessons about vulnerability, worries, and fear. So
Mhm.
I know that was supposed to be my last question, but do you have any closing remark or closing note for the listeners out there, for myself, so that we could take this and really reflect on it?
Yeah, stay empowered and stay inspired.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate every word of wisdom I was able to learn from you. I'm blessed already, and I'm glad that everyone out there has learned one or two things about cancer and about this holistic natural way of curing cancer. It's not just the hospital alone, but also one has to go through the emotional healing, cleansing, and surviving, and have this positive, authentic mindset
Yeah.
towards it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure, Toby.